Hello everyone, welcome back to the Litcenter channel. My name is Finn and this video is all about Polish literature, or
polska literatura,
as it is called in Polish. Polish literature is a literary tradition of the Central European country of Poland, where 97% of the population speaks it as their native language. That makes Poland the most linguistically homogeneous country in Europe. Most Polish literature has been written in the Polish language, though other languages have also contributed, including Latin, Yiddish, Lithuanian, Russian, German, and Esperanto. The roots of Polish history can be traced back to ancient times, when the territory of present-day Poland was settled by various tribes, including Celts, Germanic clans, Balts and Slavs. The Slavs ended up being the closest ancestors to the Poles today, and it's also to them that the Poles owe their language. As you may know, Polish is a part of the Slavic branch of the Indo-European language family. By the time the first Slavs settled in the Polish lands, Proto-Slavic, the common ancestor of all Slavic languages, was already splitting up in separate West, East and South sub-branches. Polish belongs to the West Slavic branch, and over time this branch diverged into different independent languages, one of which is Polish. Poland first became a state when Mieszko united all the Polish tribes in the 10th century. The Christianization of Poland took place in the following decades after the creation. With Christianity also came Latin, which quickly became the language used in writing. Unfortunately, almost nothing remains of the Polish literature prior to the country's Christianization. The pagan Poles certainly possessed an oral literature consisting of ancient Slavic folk tales about heroic battles, mythical creatures and almighty gods, but early Christian scholars did not deem it worthy enough to write it all down in Latin. On the other hand, we should also not be too harsh on these monks, because even if they did want to write it down, they couldn't, because there was not yet a suitable alphabet to write Polish. The Latin script did not suffice to match all the Polish sounds, so over time scholars had to invent a variety of diacritics, which since then have become a characteristic part of the Polish language. Anyway, our best guess as to what this pagan Slavic tradition might have looked like is to check out the other Slavic sources, like for example early Russian or Czech traditions. Also important to note is that even though Poland was officially Christianized in 966, in many areas, especially small villages, Slavic paganism continued to be practiced for several centuries afterward. Over time, many pagan beliefs and rituals were blended with Christian traditions, and in this way, elements of the old Slavic religion still live on in Polish folk customs and culture today. So, during the long Middle Ages, Latin definitely remained the only language used for writing, and all works produced during these centuries were mostly very religious in nature. Saint lives, annals and chronicles composed by monks in churches and monasteries thrived during this period. For secular works written in the Polish vernacular, we have to wait a long time. The oldest recorded sentence written in the Polish language reads as follows:
Daj utia pobrusa, a ty pożywaj.
This simple sentence was discovered in a Latin book. Scholars believe the sentence may portray a quote uttered by an army commander, and the monk who wrote it down in a chronicle might have found it better to keep it untranslated. When the first Polish vernacular texts appeared in the 13th and 14th century, they were all very much influenced by the Latin sacred literature. The oldest surviving poetry text in Polish is a song in honor of the Virgin Mary.
Bogu rodzica.
The earliest extant copy of the song's text dates from 1407, but its origins are much older. In the year 1470, the first printing house in Poland was set up by Kasper Straube in Krakow. This of course was a key moment, as writings could now be produced much faster with less effort, and copying mistakes could also be avoided. Around this time, the first secular works also began to appear. A particularly high literary standard was achieved in the morality dialogue between the master and death. The medieval period of Polish literature was long-lasting. During the Jagiellonian dynasty, the Renaissance arrived in Poland, which initiated the golden age of Polish literature. The Polish language was also finally accepted on an equal footing with Latin. Polish culture and art flourished under Jagiellonian rule, and many foreign poets and writers settled in Poland, bringing with them new literary trends. Such writers included Kalimach and Konrad Keltis. Many Polish writers studied abroad and at the Krakow Academy, which became a melting pot for new ideas and currents. Mikołaj Rej of Nagłowice was notable for combining medieval religious interests with Renaissance humanism and is often called the father of Polish literature. His most important works are
Żywot człowieka poczciwego.
Life of a Decent Man, a portrayal of the ideal nobleman, and
Krótka rozprawa między trzemi osobami. Panem, wójtem, a plebanem.
A short discourse between the squire, the bailiff, and the parson. A sharp social and moral dialogue reflecting the tensions of his age. The second generation of humanist poets was dominated by Jan Kochanowski, the son of a country squire. He began writing in Latin but soon turned to Polish, mastering the language's expressive possibilities. Kochanowski wrote satirical poetry and classical tragedy, but his lyrical works surpassed anything previously written in Poland. His crowning achievement, Laments, was inspired by the death of his 3-year-old daughter and stands as one of the most profound and personal works of the European Renaissance. By the end of the Renaissance period, Polish literature had become a national literature. Poland's influence spread east, above all to Moscow, while to the west its culture was represented by men of such high repute as the scientist and astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus, who argued that the Earth rotates on its axis and revolves around the sun. Educated in Krakow and Italy, he published his work in 1543, providing detailed calculations of planetary motions. Contrary to later astronomers like Galileo Galilei and Johannes Kepler, who built on Copernicus's work, Copernicus was not prosecuted during his lifetime. This was largely due to the fact that Copernicus presented the theory cautiously and only included mathematical models rather than overtly challenging scripture. Latin still remained an official language alongside Polish through the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, but Polish had gradually become more used by the nobility than Latin. The age was characterized by an ambition to write heroic epics, a preoccupation to be explained perhaps by historical events like the wars against the Cossacks, the Russians, the Swedes, and the Turks. Notable works are
Wojna chocimska.
by Wacław Potocki and
Psalmodia Posulka.
by Vespasian Kochowski. The country Poland was erased from the map from 1795 until 1918 after being partitioned between the Russian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia. After the loss of national independence, the tradition of patriotic poetry only became stronger, and the hope for a reunited Polish state never vanished. Many patriotic songs were composed shortly after the partition. One of these songs,
Dąbrowski's Mazurka.
composed in 1797, was even adopted as a Polish national anthem in 1918 when the Poles got their country back. One of the leading Polish Enlightenment poets was Ignacy Krasicki, author of the first Polish novel called The Adventures of Mr. Nicolaus Wisdom. Written in 1776, it accounts the story of a Polish nobleman who travels through Warsaw, Paris, and the fictional island of Nippur. It is also during the 18th century that the first women writers appeared on the literary field. Polish literature during the Enlightenment was deeply influenced by the country's close contact with Western Europe, especially with France and England. Polish writers drew inspiration from the ideals of reason, education, and civic virtue, but also from a growing sense of national responsibility. In an age marked by the partitions of Poland and the loss of independence, literature became a means of preserving and strengthening national culture. This period saw the rise of theaters, periodicals, and the novel, as well as a growing interest in folk traditions and vernacular culture, which writers viewed as vital sources of Polish identity. The rise of Romanticism in Poland coincided with the loss of independence at the end of the 18th century, and the nation's writers expressed this tragedy through deeply emotional and patriotic works. Adam Mickiewicz, the greatest Polish Romantic poet and a central figure of the movement, gave voice to the country's longing for freedom. His masterpieces, the poetic drama Forefathers' Eve and the national epic Pan Tadeusz, blended folklore, mysticism, and history, serving as powerful symbols of resistance and national identity. Polish Romanticism was closely tied to the struggle for independence, and its literature often inspired uprisings against foreign rule. The movement came to an end after the Tsarist suppression of the January uprising of 1863, when public executions and mass deportations to Siberia silenced many of its leading voices. In the aftermath of the failed January uprising, a new period known as the Polish Positivism emerged. Advocating skepticism, rational thought, and practical social reform, this era saw the rapid rise of an urban middle class, from which a new generation of intellectuals promoted education, industry, and gradual progress as a means of strengthening the nation. Periodicals played a vital role in spreading these ideas, especially
Tygodnik Lustrowany.
the Illustrated Weekly, founded in 1859. Elisa Orseskova, one of the leading voices of the movement, wrote about women's emancipation, the ignorance of the peasants, and the challenges faced by Jews in Poland. Her works combined social engagement with psychological depth and refined style. By the mid-1880s, Henryk Sienkiewicz had become Poland's most popular author. International fame came with his historical novel Quo Vadis, published in 1896, set in ancient Rome during the reign of Emperor Nero. The novel's success was immense, and in 1905, Sienkiewicz received the Nobel Prize in Literature, becoming the first Polish writer to achieve this honor. Around 1890, the Young Poland movement arose in literature, visual arts, and music. It continued until Poland regained independence in 1918. In many ways, Young Poland was a revival of romantic ideals, often called neo-romanticism. After the First World War, the borders of Europe were redrawn, and Poland regained its independence after more than a century of partitions. The restoration of the state in 1918 had a profound effect on Polish literature and led to a period of remarkable diversity and creativity. Between 1918 and 1939, Polish writers explored new artistic directions and developed increasing contact with other European literatures, aided by the growing circulation of translations. In Warsaw, several poets formed the influential group Skamander, which sought to make poetry more accessible and focused on everyday life rather than lofty symbolism. One of its founders, Julian Tuwim, became known for his emotional intensity, wit, and masterful command of language. During World War II, while in exile in Brazil and later in the United States, Tuwim wrote Polish Flowers in 1949, a long poem filled with nostalgia for his homeland and memories of pre-war Poland. To end this video, an honorable mention. Esperanto, the world's most widely spoken constructed language, was created by the Pole Zamenhof in 1887. It was intended as a universal second language for international communication, and to this day, many people still learn it, and there are even people who speak it as a native language. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you know something interesting about Polish literature, feel free to leave a comment and share your knowledge with other people. And I will see you in a future video.